Revelation 1931. From the 25th and 26th of May 1941. Lawfulness in the awakening of nature. Change in nature takes place in a certain order. Man is thus inclined to believe that the laws of nature mean the same thing. A certain order in time, space and form that always repeats itself. And this regularity is something that makes him think, but which he cannot explain to himself. He does not accept the only explanation, that a supremely perfect being has given these laws according to his will, and that now everything in nature has to adapt to these laws, that to a certain extent nothing comes into being by itself but is only brought about by the will of this supreme being. But again no other explanation can be given him for the lawfulness in nature. Therefore they reject any thought of it or any explanation of it. People do not find the connection between life and development in nature and God. For them, the process of awakening in nature has become something quite self-evident, so that it does not stimulate them to think how the elemental power, the highest and most perfect being, relates to it. And precisely this indifference which man displays towards the greatest question makes it impossible to have a revealing effect on people's thoughts, for no answer can be given before the question has been asked. For God attaches this condition to the distribution of truth, that it is desired. Consequently, a problem must first occupy people's thoughts before the answer is given. The forces of nature are indeed effective in themselves, but they are only ever the outpouring of divine love, that is, everything God sends into the universe in terms of light and strength visibly expresses itself in the very works of creation, that they are in constant transformation. This is most clearly recognizable in the plant world, which always renews itself in a certain time and does so in the most diverse way, so that people would have very clear evidence of God's working if they paid attention to this reshaping and wanted to seek a reason for it. Everything certainly comes into being before people's eyes and they enjoy it, yet their will is not strong enough to fathom the process as far as this is possible. They do not realize that all coming into being or becoming depends on a force, otherwise they would have to affirm the giver of force. But they would rather reject such a giver. Every manifestation of force presupposes a source of force, but the source of force must always be sought outside of it, since the radiation of force is always sent into the periphery of the source of force. The regularity of creation, however, suggests a planned creator, for nothing is arbitrary but in the most perfect order, which the human eye is also able to see. Every change in nature takes place in a regularity which must betray a wise legislation and thus a most perfect lawgiver. And if only a person pays attention to the ever-occurring creations in nature, he should be certain that there must be a controller of what has come into being, and thus it should be easy for him to believe in a supreme God being, for otherwise the thinking person would not be able to give himself an explanation which would be sufficient and credible to accept it as truth. Amen.